This is the Baseline Facetime podcast, and we've got another great episode coming at you right now. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of the Baseline Facetime podcast. Recording here on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. To any of you Star Wars people out there, I for one am not a Star Wars person at all, but I just know that that's a thing. More importantly, what we get to talk about is a playoff push here on the Baseline FaceTime podcast. For those of you that do not know, the NBA regular season is winding up, set to conclude on Sunday, May 16th. Today's the May 4th again, so just a little bit over a week and a half left for the NBA's regular season. And so today's episode, what we get to do is just to go over some news and notes, of course, of what's going on around the league, but really focus on this playoff push. Eastern Conference standings, Western Conference standings. We're going to talk about the play-in tournament that's happening between seeds 7 through 10 in each respective conference, kind of go over how that works and what to expect. Going to give some baseline ballers of the week out to quite a few guys, actually, and we'll get to all that here throughout the course of the episode. So, this is episode 37. Again, my name's Troy. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Hey, this is kind of how it works. I get to go through some different news notes around the league, give some predictions, and I hope that you enjoy it, and glad that you're along for the ride. So let's jump right into it. The MVP race has kind of seemed to figure itself out, it seems. It appeared to be a big man race, if you will. Nikola Jokic with the Denver Nuggets and Joel Embiid with the Philadelphia 76ers. Embiid had an injury that had him sat on the sideline for 2 to 3 weeks. And that kind of hurt his chances in this MVP race. By all accounts, and just by experts around the league and giving their opinion, it certainly appears that Nikola Jokic is going to be this year's winner. That's the way it looks right now. So we'll see how that ends up. Nuggets, again, without Jamal Murray, are faring okay. Obviously, that'll probably hurt them come playoff time without Murray. But they're sitting all right in the Western Conference, sitting at the 3 seed right now. I actually have the identical record as the Clippers, who are at the 4. So look for them to certainly be either that 3 or 4 seed, because they're 3.5 back of the 2 seed, and they're 6 games up on the 5 seed. So Nuggets will be hosting a playoff series, or will be the home team in this first couple games in the playoff series out in the Western Conference, even without Jamal Murray. So MVP race looking like it's going to be Nikola Jokic. A few other names to shout out here. This is going to be an episode where we're going to look at a lot of stats and look at the standings, of course, again. But something worth noting, a shout out to Carmelo Anthony, who I believe last night, May 3rd or May 2nd, somewhere in there, passed Elvin Hayes for 10th all-time on the NBA's all-time scoring list. So congratulations to Carmelo Anthony for that. Kevin Porter Jr., another name, a younger name to shout out. He dropped 50 points, 10 assists in a game this week. Major shout out to him. He is actually the youngest player to ever drop 50 and 10 assists, beating out some elite company, including LeBron James, Devin Booker, and Brandon Jennings for that stat line. I remember when Brandon Jennings did that, I was a huge fan. I think he was a rookie that year. I was a big time on the Brandon Jennings train for Milwaukee. He obviously didn't pan out how it looked like he was going to pan out as a rookie, but man, Kevin Porter Jr., it always seems to happen during the last couple weeks of the regular season. You get to see some guys really shine, even some guys who haven't done that. You always see some guys that don't really get a chance to go out and drop 30, 40 at some point in those last couple weeks, and really cool for Kevin Porter Jr. not to be slept on by any means. I mean, he's good. He's very good. If you're putting up 50 and 10, you're good. So, just pretty cool stuff there. They needed something. The Houston Rockets certainly needed something there. There's been some more crazy stat lines again, even not just including some lesser names, if you will, but some big stars putting up big numbers, including Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic, of course. We'll get to some of what Russ has done later on in the pod. The Pacers had a pretty crazy game this week. They beat the Thunder by a score of 152-95. That is not incorrect. That is not a typo. That is not a whatever you want to say. 152-95. The Pacers beat the Thunder. Sabonis had a stat line of 26, 19 boards, and 14 assists. He actually had a triple-double at halftime in that game. So shout out to the Pacers for that. Pacers are sitting right now at that 9 seed, so they're set to play in that play-in game, it looks like. But again, major shout out to them. 152-95. Then they lost a couple days later to the Wizards. They lost a game 154-141. So some high-scoring games by the Pacers as of late. Luka Doncic doing what he does best, stuff in the stat sheet. 31 points, 12 boards, 20 assists. 20 assists and a 1-point win over Washington earlier this week. And so, yeah, pretty remarkable stuff. But let's, again, focus on the playoffs. All right, let's start in the Western Conference and how that is shaping up, what to look for over these next, again, 12 days left in the regular season. Here's what you need to know. Currently, the Utah Jazz are sitting at the 1 seed in the West, a half-game lead on the Phoenix Suns. And then, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, the Denver Nuggets and Los Angeles Clippers have identical records at the 3 and 4 seed, followed by the Los Angeles Lakers, sitting at the 5 seed, with only a game of separation between them and the Portland Trailblazers, who are at 7, Mavericks in there at 6. All right, so here is what we need to know. What's the play-in game? How's it work? Or this play-in tournament, how's it work? Let me tell you. Okay, so seeds 7 through 10 are all going to have a play-in, quote-unquote, play-in tournament after the regular season concludes. Here's how it's going to work. So seeds 7 and 8 will play each other. 1 game. The winner will have the 7 seed in that conference. All right, so right now, if things shape out how they're currently sitting, the Trailblazers and the Warriors would play 7-8 seed. Winner gets the 7 seed. Winner's in. Okay, the loser of that 7-8 matchup would play the winner of the 9-10 game. So currently, again, the Grizzlies and the Spurs are sitting at 9 and 10. The winner of the 9-10 game would play the loser of the 7-8 game. The winner of that game would get the 8 seed. Okay, so you lose the 9-10 game, you're gone, you're out. You lose the 7-8 game, you get a chance to play the winner of that 9-10 game for the last spot in the playoffs. And the thing that's not up for debate, at least in the Western Conference, just so you know, is what teams are going to be there. At least it looks like. Okay, so you've got the 10 seed San Antonio Spurs, and they have a 2.5 game lead on the potential 11 seed, which is the Pelicans. So the Pelicans are sitting on the outside looking in right now, at least on the playoff tournament festivities. However, what teams are going to have to play in that playing game seem to be pretty, again, up for grabs. So you got the Trailblazers, who again are trailing that 6 seed by just a half a game. So the teams that are in danger of possibly falling in to the play-in tournament are the Lakers and the Mavericks. The Lakers and the Mavericks and the Trailblazers. Okay, one of those teams will play in the play-in tournament. Okay, there's only 1 game separating those 3 teams. Two of those teams are going to be in, automatic. One of those teams will play in the play-in tournament. And it's going to be interesting to see. Someone that was a little unhappy about his team's chances of playing in the said play-in tournament happened to be LeBron James. I have a quote from him here. Where is it? Where is it? All right, so LeBron's not happy. A couple days ago, he said, whoever came up with that crap, except he didn't say crap, whoever came up with that crap needs to be fired. Keep in mind, this is the same LeBron James who last March was quoted as being highly in favor of this play-in tournament. So which is it, LeBron? Which is it? Again, quoted as being in favor last March, and a couple days ago, he said whoever came up with it needs to be fired. Now, we can all pretty much assume correctly as to why LeBron is upset now and wasn't prior. He was not upset last year because his Lakers were sitting at the top of the Western Conference. They were nowhere near a play-in game. He's upset now because his team has a real shot at having to play in a play-in tournament. Now just imagine a LeBron James team, defending champion Los Angeles Lakers, and I know the injuries that have riddled them this year, but that would be insane. And it would be crazy to see. Again, Lakers lose a few, Portland gets hot, Dallas stays where they are, boom. Lakers are going to be playing potentially the Spurs or the Grizzlies, and then if they win, they're in. If they lose, then they're going to have to play someone else in that mix. The Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Spurs, and so on. So it's pretty interesting stuff. Just funny how LeBron is just quoted a year apart, just complete opposite quotes from him regarding the play-in tournament. Let's take a look at the Eastern Conference. I think we have a good handle on the West and the potentials that exist there. Again, the teams to keep your eye on are those teams that exist between 7 to 10, and then those teams that are just avoiding the tournament right now, the Lakers and the Mavericks. So keep an eye out for those teams. Eastern Conference, 76ers currently have a one-game lead on the Brooklyn Nets. Over the last couple days, that has changed. They changed to the Sixers having a one-game lead, I should say. They were actually a game and a half back a couple days ago, but the Nets lost to the Bucks on, I want to say Sunday. The Sixers took care of business on Sunday to take a half-game lead in the Eastern Conference, and then the Sixers took care of business in Chicago last night to give them a full one-game lead in the East. Brooklyn set to do battle again with the Milwaukee tonight. I believe that game is in Milwaukee as well. So a tough schedule actually for the Nets the rest of the way. I think 7-8 games left for both of these teams. Sixers have a pretty favorable schedule. I think only playing one team that is above 500 in the Miami Heat, and the Nets have a bunch of teams that are under 500 with a road. A lot of those games being on the road. So again, something else important to know here is that the Sixers own the tiebreaker between these two teams. So shall they finish with the same record, the Sixers would win the 1 seed and the Nets would get the 2 seed. You gotta like the Sixers' chances, I think, if you're a Sixers fan like myself. But again, you just gotta take care of business. Of these next 7 games, you win 6 of them, you get it. And that's saying that the Nets are going to go undefeated, which is highly unlikely. Again, given their schedule, which includes the Bucks, the Nuggets, I believe. Let me just look here. The Bucks, the Nuggets, the Mavericks, and a couple games with Chicago, Cleveland, and San Antonio. But again, those first 3 games, Bucks, Mavericks, Nuggets, first 3, lose a couple of those, their chances are not looking great to get that 1 seed, and that is very important. We talked about it on the last episode. The 3 best teams all year in the Eastern Conference have been the 76ers, the Nets, and the Bucks. The one of those 3 teams, the Bucks are now 3.5 back of the Sixers in that category. The one team of those 3 that gets the 1 seed obviously will only have to play one of the other teams. Okay, for example, if the 76ers get the 1 seed, the Nets get the 2, the Bucks get the 3, and those teams all take care of business in the first round, the 76ers will have a matchup with either the Knicks or the Hawks, it appears, and the Nets and the Bucks will have to do battle in the second round, meaning that the winner of that series would likely play the 76ers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Again, that's important. That's important. The less top dogs that you have to play, the better chance you have of making it to the finals. That's just the way it is. And so the 1 seed's very important in the East right now, and it's looking like the Sixers have the advantage. Again, 1-game lead. We'll see how that plays out. Could the Nets get it? Absolutely. But given the schedules, given the tie-break situation, and given the 1-game lead for the 76ers currently, you got to like their chances. Okay, let's move to the bottom. Okay, same thing in the East. 7 to 10, 7 and 8 play each other, 9 and 10 play each other, and so forth. So the East is shaping out right now as it sits. The Boston Celtics are in 7th. The Charlotte Hornets are in 8th. The Pacers are in 9th, and the Wizards are in 10th. There's just a game between the Celtics and the Heat for the 6 and 7 seed, so keep your eye on that as to which of those teams will be in the play-in. The Atlanta Hawks are right there as well at the 5, just a game and a half up on the Celtics. But 8, 9, and 10 seem to be set, at least in those areas. So the Hornets, Pacers, and Wizards, they could flop a little bit, but looks like they will be 8, 9, and 10. Just don't know what order yet. So keep your eye, again, on the Hawks, the Heat, and the Celtics. One of those teams will be in the play-in tournament. All right? And it looks like they'll play the Charlotte Hornets. Winner of that game gets the 7 seed. Loser of that game plays the winner of the Pacers and the Wizards, potentially, to get the 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. Predictions? I don't know. If things sat where they are right now, I can certainly see the Celtics taking care of business, I would say, with the Hornets. Again, it's just off the top of the brain right now. Top of my head right now. And the Wizards, they're scary. I think they could take care of the Pacers and then take care of the Hornets. I like the Wizards to get into the playoffs. Those two guards, man, I don't want to see them, but potentially could again in the Eastern Conference round 1, which would be the 76ers and the Wizards, should they take care of business in their play-in tournament. Okay, so those are just some things to watch for. Again, 12 days left of the regular season. I mean, it's getting interesting at the bottom and at the top of some respective conferences. We'll see how things shape out. So keep your eye on those things moving forward over the next couple weeks. Got a few other things to talk about. Again, some baseline baller of the weeks to give out. And a crazy stat of the day belongs to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I read this a few days ago. I don't know what it's at currently. But according to some source that I don't remember, 87% of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's buckets this year have been unassisted. 87% of the time when he puts the ball in the basket, it's by himself, and not off an assist. Just a pretty crazy stat. I don't know what the league average is or anything like that, but I know that is high. 87% of the time. Just thought that was an interesting stat. Baseline baller of the week. Let's give it out, and we're going to do it a little differently this time. We're going to mix it up and give out 3 in 1 week. I can do that because, well, why not? I came up with the award. So, we're going to give it to 3-point guards. 3-point guards that have been around the league quite a few times and been known around the league quite a few times, I should say. A couple of them have been on a few different teams. The first one, baseline ball of the week, shout out Steph Curry. You probably saw this one coming if you have any idea what he's been doing lately. His month of April was just absolutely remarkable, and to get his team into, again, a playoff scenario where they could get in is pretty remarkable too. 38 points per game in the month of April. 38 points per game for an entire month. And keep in mind, the NBA has jam-packed this schedule, so that, I don't know how many games that is, but it's a lot, and it's more than a normal month even, and he did that for an entire month. 38 points, almost 7 threes made a game on 53% shooting and 47% from three, so shout out Steph Curry for that. Excuse me. Next is Russell Westbrook. Love him, hate him, whatever you are, wherever you fall on that, listen to these numbers. He's put up some really, really crazy numbers as of late. But most notably was a couple nights ago when he put up 14 points, 21 rebounds, and 24 assists. So that tied a career high in assists for him, a new rebounding career high for him in one game. Again, 24 assists, 21 boards. That's the second of his career. And he's the only player in NBA history with multiple 20 assist, 20 rebound games. He joins Wilt Chamberlain, I believe. I saw something like that just real quickly, just a few minutes before I started recording, and I think that was it. It was Wilt Chamberlain that has one other game of again, at least 20 assists, 20 boards. Russell Westbrook has 2, and he's the only person, I know that for a fact, he's the only person with 2 such games in NBA history. So if you call him a stat sheet stuffer, if you call him a guy that only cares about his own numbers, whatever you say, and as he would put it, you're hating because you can't do it, or you can't, I don't know what he said, but something along those lines, to where, one, he needs to be respected. 2, there's not many people like him. That's what he said. There's not many people who do what he can do and does, and you just got to look and appreciate his game. Again, love him, hate him, think he just does it for the numbers, whatever you want to say. Those numbers have never happened before, twice in a career, and he's done it now. So shout out to him. He now has the most 20 assist games that included a triple-double in NBA history, with 5, I believe, passing Magic and Rondo, who had 4. So he has 5 games where he has had 20 assists alongside a triple-double. Just remarkable stuff from Russell Westbrook. Last, but certainly not least, for our shout-outs of these point guards is Chris Paul. Let me show you some numbers, some records of teams the year before they got Chris Paul and the year that Chris Paul joined the team. Remarkable stuff. Chris Paul, the year before he joined the Suns, they went 34-39. 34-39. This year, they currently sit a half game back of the 1 seed in Utah and are at 46-18. 46-18, and have themselves their first playoff berth since 2010. So a crazy record change for the Phoenix Suns. The Chris Paul effect. Let me show you another Chris Paul effect. The Thunder, before Chris Paul came along, they were 49-33. Not bad, but keep in mind who was on the team then. Russell Westbrook and Paul George. 49-33. They kind of sold everything. They got all these draft picks. If you remember a couple years ago, and they're still getting draft picks, but they were like, okay, we're done. Like, we couldn't do it with Russ. We couldn't do it with PG. Let's just rebuild. And they rebuilt, and they found themselves with Chris Paul, who I believe the Thunder were picked like last in the Western Conference the year that he came in, and they did not do that. They made the playoffs, I think, as the 4 or 5 seed, and finished with a record of 44-28. Now, is that record better? No. But think about the team that he was with and what they were able to do and what the expectations were for Chris Paul there. 2 more. Rockets. Before Chris Paul, they were 55-27. After Chris Paul came along, they were 65-17. 65-17. Pretty impressive stuff there. The Los Angeles Clippers. The year before acquiring Chris Paul, they were 32-50. Not so good out in the Western Conference. And the year after, They finished 40-26 with Chris Paul. Again, the Chris Paul effect. None of these, he had a losing record, not even remotely close to a losing record in any of these seasons. And you just got to show some appreciation. I've even been recorded, I think, on this podcast, not hating on Chris Paul, but not giving the respect that he deserves. Seeing some of those numbers and just realizing what he's done, and he's even getting some MVP talk. Not that he's going to win it or anything, but just to hear his name mentioned with the MVP, and now his 16th, 17th year, somewhere in there, 15th year, is pretty remarkable. So shout out to Chris Paul, Steph Curry, and Russell Westbrook for our baseline baller of the week. A couple more things. Actually, just one more thing. So the Eastern Conference, just a funny note here. So the top four as it sits in the Eastern Conference right now, again, are the Sixers sitting at first, the Nets, the Bucks, and the Knicks sitting in fourth. Sixers, Nets, Bucks, and Knicks. In 2016, just 5 years ago, here's what the bottom of the Eastern Conference looked like. The 12th seed was the Milwaukee Bucks. The 13 was the Knicks. The 14 was the Nets. And the 15, last in the Eastern Conference, was the Philadelphia 76ers. So the same four teams that make up the top of the Eastern Conference here in 2021 are the same four teams that were at the very bottom of the conference back in 2016. So quite a turnaround for all of those franchises. Shout out to the Knicks, man, and just for what they've been able to do. We know the Bucks have been good for a couple years. We know the Nets story with this super team that they've established in Brooklyn, and certainly the Sixers, who have turned it around since some historic record-losing seasons a few years ago, with 2016 being one of those. But what they've been able to do this year has been impressive, and certainly a thing to watch. So we'll see. Playoff Push, episode 37 of the Baseline FaceTime podcast. That concludes this one. Hey, we're going to be back, either just before the end of the regular season or at the end of the regular season to preview some playoff action. I hope you'll tune into that. I believe last year we did a Western Conference preview, an Eastern Conference preview, gave some predictions. So make sure to tune in for that here in just a couple weeks. The playoffs will have a bracket, if you will, here in just a couple weeks. Looking forward to the NBA playoffs 2021. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Baseline FaceTime podcast. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.